Thus I have heard. At one time the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Vulture Peak Mountain, with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son of lineage train who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words, Shariputra, those men and women of lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. Sanskaras are seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness.
In the same way, there is no feeling, no recognition, no
constitutional factors.
consciousness.
This often are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure,
Therefore, emptiness,
no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind,
no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste,
no sensation, no phenomena. There is no quality of sight,
no quality of mind, no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, no exhaustion of ignorance, and so on. No old age and death, no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no past, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, since there is no attainment,
bodhisattvas rely on and abide by the means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All Buddhists who dwell in the three times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom and become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight,
unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra.
The mantra which claims all suffering should be known as truth because it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed.
Om Gate Gate Paragate Samgate Bodhisattva.
Shariputra, this is
how Bodhisattva Mahasattva trained in the profound perfection of
wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said,
Noble Abong Rinpoche, he had spoken well. Well done, O son of lineage of this soul. O son of lineage, since it is just so, the
profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught,
and that the will also rejoice. The Blessed One had said this,
the Venerable Shariputra, the Noble Abong Rinpoche, and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and gandharvas, rejoiced in praise the words of the Blessed One.
Lam Rim Chenmo Sama da ye je la so de xie zhuo da bie xiong a de shang de bie me bo zhong de jie nian jiu na jie guo jie song la so ga da la ma na la so de ga da la ma na la so de 好人是的，素质总光芒，我都是别我说的早点，当的别都不给主见，要是就不见了所望的，要是就不见了所望的。 조선 군대 남아 도제 정 가라 군대 신예 주선 조던 규모 무주 수제비 전제 남아 노나 소원데 전제 남아 노나 소원데 라자 소로 겨나 다예미 给咱这帮这边中安住，这人这边都给自把也，孙子新年能拿送完的，孙子新年能拿送完的，叫我更多样的那么多，这边去这边拉拢之间。 萨达那杰耶德罗多呢，罗杰强给个万年多数，罗杰强给个哎哟，三杰就当四杰就当那，想就不多那的就四杰。 大愿解决这边所难解，罗拉偏下三界诸法修，三界这当所见就难难，大就不多的念就所见，大愿解决这边所难解，罗拉偏下三。 罗瓦说三界就当所见就难，上就不多大念就所见，大愿之见这边所难见，罗拉边下三界诸法修。哎呀，好的，这个么子。 对对，听东北人咱俩怎么的结巴嘛？最近查见了也得想一把。
이제 순하게 니들 순하게
대신 가서 다 로직이 세가라 통만 거 들어가 인자는 넘바데 되는 게 찾진 리가 매겨지 여반도想一把。
So, given today is the first day of our teachings, so I have decided to chant the detailed supplications of detailed Lam Rim supplications.
对起，俺那个做通嘛，搞当别人那么做是通他你来小娃你是，那通没小娃的，他没小娃，年纪那呢，那他没小娃的。啊不。 通他你来小娃你是那也，那通嘛个说最近查见了已经查的没小娃子，通嘛个说跟拢的解决。 我那现在去等着逻辑因素呢，逻辑也呢可能也通嘛的了，跟我去就相当样，通嘛也，这也逻辑也跟我去的，过去的等着有了，他基本当不是商业的多啊。
So, as a custom of the great masters of the past, such as Kadampa masters, have the two actions while receiving the actions of the actions in the beginning of the receiving the teachings and actions at the end. So actions in the beginning of the receiving the teachings is to cultivate appropriate motivations, which is very important. So therefore, it is said that if one knows how to cultivate appropriate motivations in the beginning, and that very single moment of cultivation of positive motivations is valid motivations of throughout the year.
오늘 결혼 전에 가리 결혼선은 차지 때문에 그래서 시제대에서 로직인 제리지에도 대나 얘기 맞아 토만은 제리지 아니 론데에 나올 처럼게 가르치게 최소는 가르치게 살아와이나 아니 게다 가서 나리 좀 친해 정해지 매지이나 다 대바친 비죄는 친해지이나 아니 현재 당직 요단도 조배 상지지 공부도 비치에도 능에另外 예수교相当 강한 거대 아니 다 조배 상지지 저런 로에 대한다라 능에 최예네 최소게네 샤와는 주고인 세드 거로가
So simply the more shaping one's motivations or cultivating appropriate motivation is to to planning. It is a master plan of what one is going to do. So you're actually laying out your own schedule of one full year. It's like laying out your full schedule. What will be I doing? And you, just as we have a schedule of what we are going to do in this full year, for the entire year, similarly, the practice of motivation, cultivation of motivations is actually, laying out the schedule of what you are going to do. For us, as the followers of the teachings of the great stages to the path to enlightenment, or the Lam Rim Chenmo, or the followers of the Mahayana Dharma, one's very actions of body, speech, and mind must become a virtuous, and must making it is one ensure to make one's actions of the body, speech, and mind becomes a condition for achievement of enlightenment for oneself and that of other sentient beings.
당나 속에 된데 다 제가 이슈 당나 속에 가는 간칭 기노 지게 예나 기노 사자 가 지버에 아니 대리 내가 가이를 사자 가이를 살아와이나 아니 랑이 된제 나가 되니라 아니 가 속에 대사 때는 이 컴바선데 된데 천원지 매져와지 네 랑이 된제 나가 되니라 아니 좀버 투병 볼라 아니 나래지 라마 수건되겠지 시엔제디 넘버 집 차치나서 당시 왜 저랑 신체지 쇼도 여사는 미바지자다.
So now, when cultivating motivations, and one should not imagine being oneself in one's ordinary place, but rather one should think of being oneself in the presence of the Buddha, who is surrounded by all those great beings such as Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and gazing at oneself delightfully and radiating lights from their body.
아니 랑 다다가 손대노로 진전적인 레벨 지고천의 천함에 받지 아니 랑이기 파마네 아니 롱반디기 메네 아니 사이 콜란디니메 세나레 다디 소참도 신신절라 아니 랑아소게 데리 추제되는 레이어스 아니 딘더기 데는 마치 다윈데 달라 아니 로지 제거인 아니 나다 집에 지자를 된데 대완되와리 다 대화된 거는 두고지 제거인다서는 선제선은 막 제와 쇼청보지 용도에 된다라 나가서 가만히 있지 가만히 지지 미바지 그래서 사실
So now, next is cultivating the motivations that one should not think of oneself just only by oneself, being at the presence of the teacher and receiving the teachings, but rather one should imagine that one is surrounded by one's parents, relatives. In other words, expanding those and imagining entire sentient beings in one's surrounding, including animals and insects and so forth. In other words, without exception, all sentient beings are imagine in your surrounding. And just as I myself have a genuine inspiration to receive the teachings of the Dharma, so too all beings who are in your surroundings have a similar motivation to receive the teachings of the Dharma. With these motivations, let's take a couple of minutes to meditate by extending compassion towards all beings.
산제게 샹추게 산제 조베 산제 고마타 마촌데 라드와 로와 런데 타신바지 두알라 샹추 세메나 민조와제 다 메젠다 지 라파네 시사는데 카드 크산데 지레마도 된다 라니 라기 된다 지거로 맞아 던데지 고아만이야제 젠데지 제거레서 라유니컬라 바 산제 타지게 된다 주네 쳇던데 간데 노트 제위에서 샤사게도 세데 고아몽보시데 노트 된 쇼다 샹추 센체가 세도 소소게 된다 타신바 두비 된다 레마도 제가 팬덤에 팬세데 자체체 투에서 개면도 왔다 그 말이 됐어 세죠 팽으로 와 이나야 수수 된다 이면 셰고도 왔다 간지 너디나.
So here, when speaking about cultivating motivation or the body motivations, or the motivations of altruism, we have a tendency of having the idea when speaking about cultivating altruism is merely to benefiting other beings. This is, however, not so. But rather, this cultivation, this altruism, or particularly the cultivation of bodhicitta, is to ultimately benefiting oneself, one's own self. And in order for one to fulfill or to perfect one's own purpose, the practice of bodhicitta is indispensable. Without practice of bodhicitta or cultivation of bodhicitta, the perfection of one's own purpose is not possible at all. So therefore, whenever we think about working for the welfare of other sentient beings, cultivating altruism or bodhicitta, we always have this idea of benefiting others, not having any benefit for oneself, which is completely wrong. We are actually receiving an ultimate benefit as a result of cultivating altruism or the bodhicitta.
됐지. 아마 저 들으게 경험 치바지 전에 추 가르쳐 버려. 세서나 추에서나 가서기 조치 있다는 거야. 추에서는 줘봐서다. 줘봐서도 줘봐. 줘봐서나 야나 줘봐서도 야와도 줘도 야와 줘로. 두 상모도 야와슈 줘봐들 추에서라고다.
So, with these motivations, then we're engaging in the practice of Dharma. What we're doing is we're engaging in practice of Dharma. So Dharma, which is the original term of Sanskrit, which is translated in Tibetan as a Che. The Che literally means to modify, to make change, transforming or changing or modifying. What is being modified? So when we speak about modifying or changing, it may change from positive to negative, or it may change to negative to positive. But in this particular context, when we talk about Che or to modify, it is to be understood in terms of modifying from negative to positive.
Ana nga soge tendege chulu 단다게 nga soge me jitendela chulu res ma chiba de lewareda tanda nga soge yik ngobi nensi tenla pene ane lan jubi rimba ane rebu konyi ki kopon tawi rimba mano wa dengen tala ane tanga soge sana ane damba tobe ombo ane lo nye dong nga ja tanga je ta chuja sen ma zen ti duse tendi chile pe warwa ta degi lan kare tensha arasana deri nga so kosu baba ane degi lan tenba de nga so chenye che warwa.
So, in this world, there have been many religious founders have emerged. And out of all, the Buddha Shakyamuni, the way he found his practice of religion is something very unique, who actually established the basis. Upon the basis, then the practice of path, the stages of the path. Having completion of the stages of the path, or perfecting stages of the path, then there is the result, the achievement of 2 kayas, which is the result, having perfected 1 stages of the path. And this is a very unique, teaching that's given by Buddha Shakyamuni, like more than 2,600 years ago. And this is the path, the stages of the path that we are, taking keen interest in receiving the teachings and contemplating and practicing.
나 되게 네 때는 많이 때는 게 추세지지 아니 나를 이 사제대 창조지 라라 지제네 아니 많이 가서 산사보다 로투무도 딱 저당은 때 때는 가서 동모 인사데 나를 이 사제보는 고아치 렌지 동모의 추세지지 아니 때는 많이 동모 인사.
This is first teachings of this year. I will not, go through the new chapter. Rather, I'll try to, summarize the teachings that we have the teachings that I've given previously by going through each outlines and try to be at the point where we have reached the explanation of the guide, teachings of this stages of the path to enlightenment.
다 된게 덤버 세대 가서게 줄을 현다 요건초 난칼이어서 괜찮지 말이야. 가서 덤버 투병 한번데 딱 맞춰기 메디센에 개말 가지로 된지게 될 미 넘발에 아니 제사 좀 제시빵 아니 친에 처음에 바로도셔네 아니 보다 보면 추모다 노다나 지시다 렌친 샤주 샤당에서게 아니 미게 넘버 더나는 아니 제시 좀 아니 로드쇼 아니 찬소전에 미 리덴치를 패네 아니 손샤주 지가 저게 무슨 통화에 그거라 아니 상제생의 조율에서는 남칼은 저거 주네랑 레메도아.
So for us as a followers of the Buddha Dharma, when we talk about Buddha, we're not pointing our finger towards the space or the sky, like other believers that thinking that they have some ultimate beings or the supreme being somewhere in the space, formlessly existed. This is not what we were talking about. We're talking about a Buddha who actually came to this world and born as in a royal family as a prince, and who finally who then renounced all this princely or luxurious existence, princely existence, and renouncing all those resources such as one's a son and spouse and all other belongings, such as elephants and chariots and all of those belongings, in other words, have been renounced. And this is a kind of Buddha that when the founder of this Dharma, which should be understood in this way.
산제 단다 가사 아니 단다 제바 세상세계 세계 뒤 임바 마세 아니 제로 소지 바세데 아니 저와 한만 넣어서 제로 소기 로지 단데메도네 간제 미치게 아니 메이 때라 아니 뭐바도 산제 생에데 단다 로지 뭐서 얘기지 로 그런 게 꾸디 마세데 제로 맞아 제로 소지 바세데 하나가 손전한데 덤바데 지지데 집에 강사 만들어 지지 손제 수가를 제로 소기에는 손제 소기 지기 로지 요야는 게 들어와 근데 이 갈래 전에 산재생의 중요한데 맞아 저시 전에 산재생의 중요해야지 아니 이응업이 내시기 때나 버전 저번 용단 가져야 되잖아요 아니 좋아도에 진짜게 다당가 저기 줄루지게 제선 정도였다
So we are actually following a very unique teachings of the Buddha, Buddha who has a history of this the present Buddha Shakyamuni, who has a history of being born as a prince, and the father Sudana, King Suddhodana, and then came to this world as a human beings, and gone to an endeavor in all those practices, and gain the state of enlightenment. So, and then not only that, but also the Buddha is the backgrounds, or actually the stories of the Buddha or the biography of the Buddha. It's not only we find the present Buddha's biography, but also his previous lives. And slowly show the previous lives of the 34 lifetimes, stories or the backgrounds can be found in the Jataka tales.
근데 상당히 비거라 맞아 지 영화 추군 쯤부터 땜비신 제법이 쳐와 세요데 아니 근저기 땜바지게 폐회나 땜바되게네 지선 당에 땜바되게 제반하게 소선러나 아니 저거 여사래 여사 말이에요 로아 신주 타신베 제여의 지지래
So this is, it actually gives us opportunity to analyze. If we were to follow these great beings, is there a way that we can perfect ourselves? We can perfect ourselves by following these individuals or these great beings. It is therefore we find right from the beginning of the Lam Rim, the Lam Rim become opened with this outlines of what we call the greatness of the authors given in order to show the teachings as noble source.
그렇지. 맞아. 텐데만 텐비 강시신의 텐발에 이치니베 따도 강쇼라 그러와. 텐비 강시 가르다 따는데 텐바 코너게 로지다 난다. 지게 단지라바나 이게 근처 예래다세 지 근처에 치료래세 개체면이야지. 아니 하나 메드메투비 개시시야다 버지 로지여와.
So it is therefore we also find in the praise to the dependent arising words is by knowing what kind of the practice endeavored by the Buddha Shakyamuni, which enables one to have a genuine devotion and faith to the Buddha, and and enables us to follow the path that has been taught by the Buddha.
아니 산제 코노 페비콜라도 된지 정례잖아. 오늘 되게 general이 집어 담바 가르쳐야래서나 고물루도 루루다 토멜로 소비기 자가기 변주. 아니 대노하게 가서 대랑에 침범 뭐스기 다 손바고 세거라 아니 상주론주 좀 상이게 아니 조제 받아야 돼 샤세. 그래서 로지당 다그 대수 천주의 계셔서는 대방 영역이 로지여더라.
So therefore, if you look at the Buddha Shakyamuni and then his followers, the great beings, their consistent practice of the Dharma has carried out by the Buddha's followers, such as Nagarjuna, Asanga, and also the actual teaching of the Lam Rim given by the great Indian master, Atisha Divamkara Shirijana, and so on.
대대기 뒤에서들 데려 가시는 나가서 시야야 말하면서 대대손이 마 잡아나 이게 대대가라 아니 덤바도 덤바 건바도 건바 제안하잖아 아니 남비기 세리 돈을 따지지는 저버전에 아니 된저게 하나 대대가를 마주 지원선한 되게들 된저게 집어 담바 산지 매셔봐지로 맞죠 대대손이 메시지 찾아서 계셔서 나기 매봐지 아니 리바다 나중에 저버전에 아니 덤바데 덤바 뭔가 옆에 놓게 아니 덤바 세다 덤바 가르래선 덤바 세다 덤바 마이나 파쇼 건바데 깨지 되냐라지 건바 메타 태도에 소르다 된저게 빠르지 나 그런 제바 그런 제네 아니야 대형비 소리지 남비 덤바데 차그래.
So the Buddha's doctrines of the teachings of the Buddha established in such a way that that so much so that at that time, when all those scholars and the learned ones gathered and have a great debate among themselves, and which part of the teachings is more valid and which part of the teachings is not valid. So whoever actually defeats whoever is get defeated and actually surrender all their monasteries and their teachings to the group of the scholars who actually gain the victories. So it is in this way the Buddha's teaching is actually established and propagated by those beings who actually follows the Buddha's teachings.
대리가라 나서 다가지 구조 접어내면도 대리가라 제보 다 진천제와 야와라 진천제되는 제보이 아니 고지잖아요. 아니 담바 파쇼기 담바 전화제 추쇼 담바 전화잖아요. 다 주버 담바도 파초는 접어세지네. 아니 된저게 로지 쇼도 내나에 치수양서 나비게 담바들 다 코로나 쪽에 또는 배제마도는 나비 담발에 대타지 내고도 되는 마전에 담아서기 자가기 나네 줬어서 때 삼에 동샤로 마도 은혜겠지 세리랑이 더 나로를 저버저기 고거 영인지나 아니 쇼고에지 레면도.
So then at that time in India there are many kingdoms or the regions actually governed by the kings, and the kings actually come up with the idea of letting those religious leaders of this side and that side, in other words, to have a debate, and whoever's the teaching is more valid and more relevant, so then this religion or the teachings should be accepted as the teachings of that kingdom and so forth. It is how the Buddhist teachings and the Buddhist scholars have gone through that and be able to establish those teachings in many different kingdoms in India. But however, at the later part of around 11th to 12th centuries, the Buddhist teachings have been decline, tremendously, because it is not because of having a debate and comparing their knowledge, but rather there is a very barbaric act by some other forces and actually destroyed barbarically. It is not something that having a debate and establishing their reasonings to have to destroy the Buddhist institutes.
다 뒤서 된지 이거라요. 배기 밴드 다들 배 나네다 밴드 다들 배 같은 로주에다도. 얘나 된지는 취직 저기에는 배기게 가서 자가기 쳐되는 다 자가 되들 출루 돈은 강이 뭔가 유지로 배려한 된지 시나 잡을게 말로. 된지 전에나 가지 밴드 다들 로자 된지 카면 되면 배는 된다도 로주 돈은 시나 쉬 된지 아니 배랑이 게 돈은 로라. 배게 남비 다가사 자가에 나네저기 주마면이 아니 템바테 아니 배기 이게 게데 이게 돈으로라 아니 보든 아니 저 손자다 저기 주투에게 저기 고거지 라네 아니 다나 마소게 잠벨인데 돈 나비 출에 친이 저거를 내가 가르쳐 셀러서나 배기 게데 이게 돈의原因이 나대 나비게 취지 차더라.
So it is the fortunate of the Tibetans who is able to have the access to all the teachings of the Buddha and the commentaries of the great masters of great Indian masters. Sorry, and so it is, due to the wisdom or the wise king, Dharma king of the Tibet, who actually invited the great Indian masters to Tibet, and as well as the Tibetans who actually came to India to study for many years and becomes learned and went back to Tibet with their knowledge and to be able to translate all those teachings of the Buddha's teaching from Tibetan, from Indian language or the Sanskrit or the Pali language to Tibetan. So therefore now at the present, when speaking about teachings of the Buddha, the teachings that are translated into Tibetan, which the volume more than 300 volumes of the teachings that were translated are said to be more complete and precise.
라바등가 랑리 쳔모게 자완 상주 랑지 드마 야 싱에 베바레 아니 베발은 치는 손조제 아니 상주 랑지 드메게 얘네 시샤제네 상주 랑리 쳔모 되게 치스 다 출루기 치스 타만데 세베나 아니 다 가저로 글로버스네레 아니 영어로만 종합을 쳔버세데요 문에 지 문에 저 얘다 저바 되었던 시에웬디가라 네네 이제는 현재 현재 만용바게 네 당화성어 최권하게 내버려서 되게 주부터 선지면 정이 패바로 남쪽이 피드성이지.
So then those teachings are the source of all Lam Rim teachings, which is the great teachers on the stages of the path to enlightenment. The teachings is the Lamdun, or it is a lamp for path to enlightenment by Atish Dibamkara Shirijana. It's actually requested by this teachings is given upon the request of the Tibetan king, and so this in turn is the teachings that we are actually enjoying of the great teachers of stages of path to enlightenment, which actually derive from this lamp for path to enlightenment by Atisha, and the Lam Rim Chenmo itself is actually written by Lama Tsongkhapa. Lama Tsongkhapa is said to be someone who is very unique and who has extraordinary intelligence, and who it is said that there had not been anyone in the land of snow with such a extraordinary intelligence like Lama Tsongkhapa says.
아주 delawura 강진 시디 존재 종가 봤으나 아니 고물루도 오마바이 신다 신지르서 배 강진이 존라 아니 동화 손제기 템바 투모마이 버세 땅에 고물루도 또 타트 버세 땅에 세서나 아니 강진 시디 수지 종가 봤으네 인제로 뭐잖아 신다 신지기 센터 봐라.
So therefore, we have the Lama Tsongkhapa is named as the trailblazer or the pioneer of pioneer or the trailblazers of the land of snow, just as Nagarjuna is known as the pioneer of this middle way. So Lama Tsongkhapa is also named as a pioneer or the trailblazers of the land of snow.
다 되게 내가 해봐라 야 소소히 실제다 농조염에 두지 토너로 인주제나 강제신도 전제 좀 캘렌토르마도 야 소소지 따와르지 공시시자 쳐서 신다세지 캘렌토르 말이야.
So
농조유도는 캘렌거에 지지레마도 대 쇼농도는 캘렌토에 지지 말해.
in order to accept Buddha Lama Tsongkhapa as a tabular status of the Buddha's teaching in land of snow, it requires intelligence as someone who is actually accepting, because it is through the analysis of the teachings given by the Lama Tsongkhapa and his compositions, it will only enable one to accept Lama Tsongkhapa as the tabulars of the Buddha's teachings in the land of snow, because without going through those analyses, will not be able to will not be able to convince ourselves to accept Lama Tsongkhapa as the tabulars, because it is only through analysis of his teachings and compositions will allow us to do so.
그러면 쭉 세워야 그러면 정말 영화 중에 상식 걸어고요. 그러면 정말 방사자식.
So let's take a 15 minutes of break. Previously, the discussion that we had was the discussion related to the greatness of the authors given in order to show the teachings of the noble source.
마치 덴보는 마치 데네 람림 쳔모로 소소기 자찬지 제데 데데노라 간제지 시샤요레스나 소소기 코츠베 된다라 아니 동보 축군 쯤바 템베신 제바비 차와스나 가르라고르서나 아니 최대 콩야보인비 예메게 된다라 덴보 투베 onbone 랑게 튼치 자이람 바다 나마트스 간제지레 세조아데.
So now, being oneself on the cushions and opening the Lam Rim text or the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, the text, open that and then think about what is meant by the greatness of the authors given in order to show the teachings of the noble souls. When such question is asked, then one should think about the Buddha Shakyamuni, who actually gave the teachings of the Dhamma and transmitted to his followers and all the way to one's own teacher.
sembola tsuwa yubi tono ma yishachi jerowa sosolo jingane je dendrige lama tsachi bo lama nawa tengi ge lama teta tekhi shawa jingane dendrige zamani ndele pesha sangende jijene ani ji sembola na tawa yubi tono ma yishale jije.
So one should try to try to imagine or to think of all those great beings with the pure devotion to those lineage gurus, and try to have a special feeling with this intense feeling of devotion and the faith to those lineage gurus, and think about how fortunate it is for us to be able to come across with such a great beings, or to such a great teacher, or the precious teachers who actually teaches us the unmistaken stages of the path.
다니바 당말에 기바치비치 추제 쳐와세데네 라마트스 자치모예나 라마트스 가르쳐셔야잖아 제바끼는 송게는 제바 초인 세데 아니 자차째 것에 가르쳐나 송이 제발래.
So now then, this is then followed by the next outlines, which is showing the greatness of the teachings in order to engender respect for the teachings. So now, when one reads this second outlines, then think about what kind of what, as we talked about earlier, that gurus are such a precious and great teachers have shown us this unmistaken path. So what kind of path that they have shown us? It is how they, by what means they showed us this stages of the path, is through speech. It is therefore out of all those activities of the great beings, the activities of the speech is said to be the supreme.
아니 되게 당아 되는 가세성 샤열에서나 아니 맞서 쇼케야 뭐네 아니 단 매지긴 론도기 쇼나네에서 사실이 거공이 마다바다 아니 람마노 대상이지 카투시나 내는 성샤열에서
So then here, the showing the greatness of the teachings in order to engender the respect for the teachings is because, and in such teachings, that one can find the unmistaken and complete instructions of the stages of the path, right from now, from as ordinary beings, and all the way to the state of enlightenment. Is taught. The stages of instructions of stages of the path to enlightenment is taught in this text.
디 나네 아니 상치 람림 첨모 생인데 간제지열에서는 시송이나 아니 단지에 강들로 상제기 취주 공부 제체지도 되자지 제송라 민자와지 송샤열에다 람림 첨모 디노로라 아니 간사지 창자의 양내 제전바 만나와 지어인자네 아니 제자 용수조비 차원 동안이 이제 네 마창하면 봐 땡유디 제자 용수조비 차원 아니 조 생기 데이터를 내는데 라드란데와 아니 대양 다스 도저 많이 봐 아니 신다 첨번이 이제 룰라키면 아마니 이제 명아지 점바 생유디 지금은 이제 파트 취배적 정도 됐을 지 녀소한에서나 코로나로 진 전혀 줘 있었죠.
So particularly the teachings of the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment with the Lam Rim Chenmo. Within this, the text in the great the Lam Rim Chenmo itself, the contents of this text, if you look at the contents of this text, are complete teachings of both Sutra and Tantra. And not only that, but also it is a very lucid, it is presented in a way that's such a very lucid form, so that it's so comprehensible for all of us. And it is very convenient for initial practitioners to practice and follow the practice of stages of the practice. So and also encapsulating the teachings of the two great pioneers or the trailblazers. And when you look at this and reflect one's mind upon such texts, then it will actually take us delightfully into these teachings, effortlessly.
되지. 다 당나를 기바집이 취지 쳐왔었는데 아니 내가 카투시나 상주 나래 쯤을 가보체도 저런 짓에 가링이 봐서 라서나 네 저와도 다 하고 시해가지고.
So then if one were to ask the question, you are keen to study with this great activities on the stages of the path enlightenment. Why? It is because I know the greatness of the teachings in order to engender respect for the teachings. This will be the answer. This should be the answer.
되지. 당나를 기바집이 취지 쳐왔다. 쳐와니도 되게 출연이 시제다 시거래서 라윤이가라. 아니 저당에 산재기 손비가라. 아니 취치냐 제비가라. 아니 취치바고라. 보여라. 천황세네리 견원세네리 간대지 그거래. 아니 취녀가 보라 간대지 그거래. 사네. 아니 좋아송바데리. 다스 지인가서 이제 팀모마일 학생들은 이제 때문다서 로비 손에 되게 깨져시서나 그 라와티냐 치고요.
So now, then the third outlines. The third outline is how to listen to the teachings in which both teachings and its authors are great. So when we read this outlines, it talks about the teacher who actually teaches the teachings, what kind of teachers or what kind of characteristic of the teachers need to be fulfilled as a teacher. And also, it also talks about the followers of the listeners who are actually listening to these teachings, what kind of characteristic or the attributes that is to be fulfilled by the listeners. In other words, the fulfillment of the attributes is required for both teacher and as well as the listeners. It is not something that it is not something that we go somewhere and become a spectator of some kind of show or something. This is not what we are doing.
되지. 야, 다지 어느 초 템포 볼라 간대지 거서는 산재기 소문이 된다서 취취 녀모 제미요 도서야 다지 예때 스더라. 이 취시바데 결혼 나바다바지 토과서데 접변저 당신하게 되는 미나요. 아니 취시바데 만화와지 된 거서는 산재랑 이까래.
So therefore, Buddha himself has stated that when one gives the teachings of the Buddha, the teachings of the Dharma, one should give so without, without any mystics, or one should give the correct teachings of the Dharma.
되지. 나한테는 이제 대소라면 저기 뭔가 지시고를 최신의 시바이나 근데 대전대 대구문도 시절은 뭐 영향이라고 영향문도 현도 이 대전이지 삼발로装나요서도 가보시 지 차보선다 저 최연라 밀란되지만 시어는 대전 대구문도 세워다 상제의 성유도는 되네요. 콜발이야 다즈 받으려 취니 되네 양취 좀 지시에 투경이 다 대자도 대서도 그거 나도 문제여야지 말이야도 뭐네 저는 상제의 송바데 취취인데 마시는 취착 말이야.
So it is whether the teachings that we have received become a teachings of the Dharma or not. It entirely depends upon one's the listeners' motivations and the way you utilize the teachings that you have received. Because without having a proper motivations, setting a proper motivations, and following a proper teachings, proper sequence, and one's receiving of the teachings and practice of the teachings will not become a Dharma teachings or not become a Dharma practice. So therefore, in order to do that, one should have this motivations, the motivations that are driven by that outlines that we have read earlier, 3 outlines that we have read earlier.
다 라마 세대의 최대의 인바장제 최신의 저기 자전의 나올선 정말이 대자랑이라 근데 맞아 세네로된 대녀비냐 보내지 샤와시에서데 로소네 로 남주여 봐 전주도 대녀여 봐 된지기 대자 세단데 마 준비가라 근데 자전의 정거리마도 단단 맞아 시바데 대 단다 손으로 뭐지 정도 가서 다 라마게 라마고가 하면은 나를 이건 거는 어떻게 좋아생이 치지어래 왜냐 간제 된저데 지가 라마 녀녀메비 초간서 치히사 라마 데데메비 나와즈 녀네 ene loma de kasa pelo jinggo ji yu ing se de jo la sing yi de cha de nya ga chen bu shu ji ya
이게 세대야 혹시 고맙습지.
아
냠냠
동바 다 동바 de san ne lo de ne bi
어디
ne ji sha wa
뒤에
xie sing yi
뭐.
ane de ja la chen yi chang wa ji ma zhong wa yin na ane 동바 de da chen yi go ba de ji song da
So so just having a qualified teacher and the qualified teacher and the authentic teachings of the Dharma alone is not going to help us. Because although that you have come across with the qualified teacher, with the teachings of the Dharma, with authentic teachings of the Dharma, but what is required is, as a followers of the teachings or listeners of the teachings, one should also have the qualities that surne, which means honesty, which is motivation, the honesty, that you have honestly, keenly having interest in receiving the teachings, with the intelligence and perseverance, and a genuine aspiration to the receiving the teachings. And this kind of quality must be present and must be, possessed by someone who's actually listening to the teachings, teachings of the Dharma. Sorry.
那就是了，那么来讲些这么是所说的新旧经的经验源嘛，对吧？这没别个了，谈到所说以谈到的长远嘛的，那么的新旧结果让到了让你的新旧结，那让些人搞了长远去讲说而已啦，那确实谈到我做了这些的实践那也一点了那个也是。
So now, but it is more like the listeners were actually analyzing the qualities of the teacher, but not analyzing one's own quality. So analyzation or the investigation of the qualities of the teacher as well as oneself is important. So it's equally important. In other words, one should undergo a critical analysis of the qualification of the teacher as well as oneself, whether one is qualified to be received the teachings or not, or the suitable enough to receive the teachings. And if both the teacher and also the listeners possess those qualities that are required to become a teacher or becoming a listeners or the followers, then one is actually following the outlines that we have read earlier.
这面呢，你们的松肉么去长度，但那么是呢，去松肉去那么些感觉点长度的，那个松的，不然呢，那么娘娘没被缺感觉吃些，那么来娘娘今年没被吃感被缺些，那么来台北的东北的对你今年没被给那么做些，不然了经过这有银行车的交行是。
So therefore, the previous Kyabje Sungpa Rinpoche has stated that there are teachers who act as a very learned, but giving the only the dry, mere word teachings, mere word teachings without having any, experiential realization, experiential knowledge of the teachings, and acting oneself as a qualified teachers, and this will have no result, regardless of how much you teach to the teachers. That's what.
的是，他们这个搞啥？联系就大小这些，他当把我讲他们觉得这把是应该的，他恰恰的创别送完人呢，那老人钱么也呢，他们的上这个啥的这一点，我看你做过的是说呢，你当不老就找现在点比这的，点的我觉得就有什么是点你有的。
So then this will then be followed by the next outlines, which is the fourth outlines, that is the sequence in which the disciples are to be taught the actual instructions. And then this has a subdivision of its own, how to rely on the teachers of the root teacher, which is the root of one's spiritual path, and how to students then train their mind after having relied on the on teachers.
되지. 당가서 대로 랑치 자와 신이 된 비치 생에 신이 된 주대 개청고 수위진선에 배정가서 단대 건반노는 힘만 개마서 신이 된 주면은 저와시만 배주셔다 세대기 샤워 가르배나요. 단랑도 미주버데 통천 연주를 손지 쇼여러 가서 건반소는 손도가 개념이有关的 쇼 손도 쇼 되지 신나도 그래.
How to rely on the teacher as a root of one's spiritual path is something that is very, very important for us as a practitioner, as a followers of the teachings of the Buddha Dharma. As it is in fact said by the great teachers at the monastery, which says, without having a proper practice of proper reliance upon one's spiritual teachers, let alone that you will have a better rebirth or better rebirth or the high rebirth in one's future life, one will not even have a better life in this present life as well.
소소기가 소소기 라레도 그 가르잖아. 되게 소소기 대파선을 되게 지야 지체 현지 손은 아마테선 최년선 로바당 진행제보다 니즈 카하르마도 소소 당에게는 안에 최년선 로뉴나 라마텔레 춘제 여친제라 그런 자는마도 될 지카동에서는 마데바소도 준이 제주 말이마도 나도 싸워 베들라도 로 다는 것은 농가들 때 내가 전부로 아마 예제자는 로그레 춘제 차로 그래 다지 당에게는 로아이나네 나마랑 차도 그래 다 때문에 지체제다 이토는 로아이나 데스카가 이제 마도마도 취지 지단냐 라민 대시 말잖아 취니 저와자 메샤한테 제는 저선에 치든 여러 그래서 배 손지 저거 뺏게 참고 농가에서는 라면다 투로도 하나.
So although it is exceptional to go to the teachings, and when someone is giving teachings, just to listen to the teachings, to gain some kind of knowledge, just mere gaining the knowledge and just going there and receiving the teachings, it should be okay. But if one cultivates a genuine faith to someone who is giving the teachings of the Dharma, and considering that individual as one's spiritual teacher and one's spiritual guidance, once you have these motivations and rely yourself on that particular teacher as one's spiritual teacher, and one should never, belittle this individual, because if you do so, then that has a great, very negative retribution. And it actually, destroys the root of one's spiritual path. So I have to be very, very careful with that. When, nowadays people says that, well, it is good to have a spiritual connection or the Dharma connection with those teachers. Whoever is giving teaching, we should go and listen to teaching. But just by listening, it's okay. But considering that individual as one spiritual teacher, we have to be very careful with that.
되지. 나 랑지 자와 신이 때문에 체유세 되래. 맞아 다로와 배는 랑땡에 야고지 메와이나 랑 로바지 대소나 배디 추도라 맞아디 세대인가 소시어로 세대인가 같이 노선나데 개마레스. 단다 리기 지와세데 지와 땡지 데마조에 양아지나 노선이나 세대 말에 지와네 체라 통치도 나로고야 돼. 아니 개침보레스 저 통치야 되로와.
So the one thing that's very important is because they're relying upon an authentic root guru or the teacher or the qualified teacher. It's important because if someone who gives the teachings that is not consistent, it is contradictory to the teachings, then one will be led to a wrong path. And this is not only have a negative impact on this life, but also the negative impacts to lifetime. So I have to be very careful with that.
그때는 로체다진이 좀 봤으니 되리 내가 치셔. 맞아 내려와 배나 파마데 버글라 저와 가세요나요. 파마데 버그긴 대나이 된돌아 가사 로제 교통이 저거마도 그거 아마 파마 버글라 저와 가세요나 버그 내가 가요바도 쉬어도 자샤와이나 버긴 대나 세대 대나 베들라도 그러와.
So then especially the outlines of how the students train their mind after having relied on teacher is really, really important. It is just like the parents who needs to advise that their children for their achievement of their goal or their objective, in other words, the right objectives. And so if the parents become so careless about whatever the objective that or the goals that children have, if you don't take care of that, if the parents pay no attention, if our parents are not paying attention to that, then this is not a right way of handling or taking care of one's children.
게이신의 천이다 된 것들이 개체쇼대로와 마도 세와 여바당지 양지 지 투산야보 여바당지 개개편 거 말이야. 나오죠영에 아니 단지나 예 라시지 만도와 대통령이 아니 마치 현재 대화시와 예시와 대하고 전전용이 쇼세에게 이게 같이 천이다 된 맞지 내와이나 아니 그 투산야바당지 개개편도 여마라와. 그걸 파마 그걸 세와 연아야 파미 그걸 허저자던 너봐요 로바져서는 걸로 빼세더라.
So just having a compassion or just being a compassionate teacher alone is not sufficient enough. It is not an ample quality to become a spiritual teacher. The spiritual teacher, on the basis of having compassion towards their followers, spiritual teacher should have a wise intellect, and who's able to present the stages of the path, unmistaken stages of the spiritual path to their followers. And just having the compassion alone is not sufficient enough to become a spiritual teacher. Just like a parents having a compassion and having a sense of caring and connectedness with their children alone is not sufficient. Without giving them a proper advice and guiding them, giving them a proper guidance, and having a compassion alone is not effective to the children.
다 가서 되는데 용해도서 용해도서 가서 뭐가 되지 다 이해는 뭐래 다 사바게 남아사바한테 투 대시게 투가 이렇게 시토에나 그 토만 허생이 내시잖아 러시아같이 아니 라메 양스녀 송 양스 송 아니 소소이 시주를 이거는 편고도 시주를 저것도 상해내나 아니 타치티 대바체비토는 천레지와이나 양소소 신을 주제버래 되면은 허생의 주인바 강실을 가디에나 허생을 뭐로도나 소소 셰바 강실을 란질을 신을 주었게 말이 줄 미야스게 말이 대 소소게 소소랑의 신주제버래.
So for here, that's the we as now is not a very new to the teachings of the Dharma. So I'm sure that we're not just blindly going to the teachers, spiritual teachers receiving the teachings, but it is okay to go and receive the teachings as just participating in this and listening to the lectures, somebody's lecture, as if somebody's lecture, and that is fine. It's absolutely fine as well. But to receive the teachings of the Dharma and considering someone as one's teacher requires a lot of analysis. One should always analyze the teacher and then also analyze one's own self. And by receiving the teachings, given with these teachings, if that really, benefits one's way of thinking, or in other words, one's own mind, and then one can take that teaching as a Dharma teachings and consider that individual as Dharma teacher. Otherwise, regardless of how much you listen to the teachings, it may be, very elegantly their elegant presentation alone is not going to, it should not be, convince oneself to become a followers and considering that someone who is giving the teachings that one's spiritual teacher, if it doesn't really benefit one's mind or transformation of one's mind.
아니 근데게 지 대반의 지제 아마 타를 지제 사비 제라 아니 소소게 간제지나 가디나 아니 소소게 살람 살이 지 간제지 강고에나 아버도 가쇼게 지 하자와다 지 하들 근데 강 치제라 나마도 뭐예 마치고 강은마도 텔레젠번 조사게 나가 지는 명예 들어와 인사디 소소게 대바데 시제ጆ 나마지 대차비 니만에 근데 소소게 냐네 간제지 제소나 콜라마 영화 소비 된다 말이 라마가 개개팽 말이 소소 주신을 주비 된다라 아니 간제지 하베지 거지 아니 하다 봐서 간제지 잖아요 근데 뭐예 마치 베기 뭐라 아니 지제가 인사 라소나 아니 시지세데 니마니마라 아니 시지데 흐른도 아니 시지데 장른도 근데 갈래 잖아요 아니 소소소소라 아니 선바도 어디 잠보 쉬지 차야지 이게 거거지여마도 가스 장샤나 최대 취지령에게 더 되게 나올라 간부 간창을 세나기 차서나 추추기 트레이싱이 들어와.
So once one cultivates a faith and devotion to that's the whoever that giving the teachings of Dharma, and if one consider that individual as one's spiritual teacher, then one should not reverse that faith. One should not, the faith should be very stable. It should not be fluctuated or some kind of, fluctuations that the faith of fluctuation is not appropriate. So particularly if one is a followers or the practitioners of the Tantrayana or the Vajrayana practice, then it is said that the root of all the practice is to visualizations or visualization or the meditation on the inseparability of one's guru and one's meditation of deities, and this kind of practice is required, and this kind of practice should be maintained throughout one's life if one considers someone as one's spiritual teacher. Otherwise, just considering someone as one's teacher, and then one is then reversing one's faith and devotions will then really become a tragic to one's spiritual life. So that's why one need to be very very important. So by receiving the teachings from such teachers, if the teachings really becomes a blessings to oneself, if one's mind is softening the day by day and becoming more compassionate and more calm, then that means you're actually receiving the blessings, and the teachings have become effective. So when speaking about receiving the teachings of the Dharma and learning the Dharma, is really to practicing Dharma, right? And by means of receiving the teachings and practicing the Dharma, is this any possibility that one is able to shape one's motivations or one's mind? And so this should be analyzed on our day-to-day life. Is there any that change is taking place by means of receiving the teachings, by means of practice? By practicing, if one should have some kind of feeling within oneself, whether one become emotional or whether one becomes so delighted. So those kind of emotion must be take place as a result of one's practice.
근데 이 용발라 만나와지 이 돈은 주는 마도 마비질은 저거 요면 매바 세고 세자로 잘라 지말 세대 패도 말아 그 고안에도 지 돈으로 와 런치서와 신년 때 뭐 가르래겠잖아 고안에도 지시나 있는 가서 주던 저거 이 돈도 고아지내나 좀 만나와지면은 저거 만나와지 용 말이 주주마 지라서 저거 말 가려야래서 유시하죠.
So therefore, when speaking about the relying on the teacher is the root of one's spiritual path. So we're certainly talking about the cause and effect. By relying upon the teacher, one is by relying upon the authentic teacher or the qualified teachers. Is there any way that one is actually be able to cultivate a cause, which is the excellent cause, which give rise to excellent result? Because excellent result should be given rise by excellent cause. So if the guru or the teacher who is actually giving the unmistaken teachings will enables to implant the excellent cause or that give rise to the excellent result, because the cause that is not excellent cannot be give rise to the excellent result.
대체 다 때는 로체 다자 이르발 니레 대이된 대위 때는 님보 렘비시 규와당 님보 제단림비 치 세데 아니 치코로 배제 돈돈에 아니 처랑이 때때 님보 렌투에 예때데 처랑에 녀샤스 예데 대초라 당마샤 아니 추연량의 제쇼세는 규마 동안들 대이 때는 님보 남비시 규와 세데 치코로게 치코로만 러유비거든 고지 당샤로 조샤래 여러분 이게 시기 대조도서지 선발은 주고 쉬어야 성도.
So then it says, having relied upon the teachers, how do we want the students to train their mind? This will then be followed by how to extract the essence in this human rebirth, on the precious human rebirth. Yeah.
다 된게 고알이 대이 때는 님보는 비슈교야 살아야지 네 님보 제단에 비치 senden 라요디 걸 동보 대이 때는 님보는 바세 등에 고 맞아 도 고다다지랭에 네 개척하듯이나 아니 처라예 네 빼미시게 때야고 지내샤 대이 때는 처라예 님보 제와시 추쇼 계시잖아 제와시만 하다 미 고본다에게 님보된 처라게 때달에 차진의 창도 아니 거의 동네 때도 범비게 타바대양처럼 님보래야기 때데 처럼도 아니 대래 타바기 조베 산제고 혼터에게 아니 님보 레야기 때데 처럼 창도 대초라 떠마신 저번저번 제시로서.
So what is meant by extracting essence in this human life is that this human life, the precious human life that we obtained at this point, is a very the basis upon which one can develop a spiritual, one can make a great spiritual development. So therefore, it is said that you have such a precious basis at this point. On this basis, you can abstract extraordinary essence of one's human life. On this basis, upon having the basis of such a precious human rebirth, one can gain the heightened state of rebirth in one's future life, such as human, devas and demigods and so on. And not only that, but one can also be able to free oneself from the ocean of cyclic existence and gain the state of liberations. And more importantly, but one can also, within the basis, having obtained such a precious basis of human rebirth, one can also gain the state of complete enlightenment. By recognizing that, in these recognitions, one should not really, one should not really misuse this human rebirth and make a good use of it.
다 되는 건 제가 너무 매체 제대로 사실 된저 된체와 니가와 지하스 된저 된치 니가 지라세 그래서 강가 단도 사실 되면 그 단도 있어 다대체 네 데이터 니볼에 비슈교와지 니보체 단에 비수지 다 니볼이 제단에 비수 나오지 나자는 게 받지 니볼에 증거하세 때 나오지 나자는 게 받지 세딩에 단지 주로 제 슈지어세 때래 내가 나리 첨모 놀러 나오지 나자는 게 받지 세세데 아니 시행년 땐신의 사제기 사바든 로는 같이 도거든 로산들이 여래게 여말에 세게 배나 많이 되는지 못하던 사정가데 전다지는 로고 하나 사제되는 사제되는 해그리 생기게 네 라리 첨모 고시행년 땐신의 멀리 손주지 봐도 네 라게 렌체데 네 로토를 지티도네 네 랑지 나자는 예반이 봐서 들거래 다 라라는 동에나 아니 가자 라메 고고 타바네 소데 아니 이게 좋아시만에 아니 손한다 전한데 멀리 상계기사 손주 도지 챙겨 고고만 로는 들리진 로사 열이 생기기 코츠바지 용비 된다라 랑지 나자는 예바체치 생인데 수도진 지송샤
So then it says, it talks about the general explanation of the path. The general explanation of the path need to be understood, and also one should have one should convinced by the understanding of the general explanation of the path. It says. So what is meant by general explanation of the path here? If you look at the teachings itself, it says the general explanation is the explanation that how one can gain the state of enlightenment, beginning from the practice of relying upon the one spiritual teacher all the way to the state of enlightenment. And this actually laying out the map of one's spiritual journey, beginning from relying upon the spiritual teacher all the way to the state of enlightenment. Just as if one is going somewhere, if one is, driving one's car and one is, embarking on the journey to get certain place, and you have all this, the knowledge of the routes, and how can we get there? In what manner that, we'll be able to get that, just get one's destination, that one's desired destinations. In the same manners, when we talk about here, the general spiritual path, general explanation of the path, it's actually laying out the map from the beginning to the end, which is the state of enlightenment.
그래서 내가 쉬우진도 아마 내가 세그래 오늘 저는 다 소속이 냐네 제투 메투 세데 코로나 바 주들려 가라 데 메바데 쇼로네 데네 시바 비제고에 들어와 근데지 시바지 제송아이나 아니 소소 난가들 로먼도 소소레다 메시네 하되지로 다지 소소 이책임도 세야다 양 로타드는 라마데 드는 요만
So it is a crucial really to understand this, the general explanation of the path, and so now it is whether one practices or not. Also, it is important to understand that the meaning of the teaching itself, and one should be convinced by the understanding of the meaning of the teachings. If one is able to do that, then one will not actually easily be led to the mistaken path, even if one is practice.
당연히 이게 뒤에 자서마 사지 창조 미게 파트 진로샤이다 있는 뒤에 다 뒤에 너서 말라 사지 돈은 아주 좀 돈으로야 그러면 그 어때인다 당연히 교수인다 다 주부제 가사나지는 제 나지나 이게 무슨 님벌린 친구들 손에 주부 총연대 동안 나지면 주부 대다 주부 챔피언 나지는 반영선인 제 주부 총연아 강시 터네 강다게 코에 대화 zan다라 라니 대변이 주부되네 타마시에서 주부 중매제 시비데라 저수지 디빌레라 도다니 강시 랑시 zan데니 주부되네 지샤 주부되제 랑지 또비 동네지 강시 제제도 양다 세바케네 주부되네 조여노 세데니 주부 침빌랑제는 바지 다 주부 침빌랑제는 마냥설렌질라 송 대신은 주부가 센제 코나 센데제 센제네 쇼발로 센제 쇼발로 저송 센제는 로발로 비제 로발로 사제문로 로발로 렘바니시바 로발로 렘바니시바니 테바치마 쫄라라 치바 도지 테바 나지 다 동보라 송 샹자 로바 노데 자자네 존네 제달리베 전 간라로 비제 텔라로 텔라로 비림바지 텔라로 비리마니 슈바 찔라라 치바 파세 타마니 라라지 다 동문데도 다 파세 타마니 라지라 주인사에 신나다 라도 피하시바 신나 라도이 말에 테니가 데니 땡인지 근데 뒤지에 때 신나 라도 뭐 데니가 강급이 전세에 땡인지 근데 뒤지에 때 Teniga Gangu Jinsen, Korean sociology, that sociology channel, Latonlogy, that goes about Latonlogy, Tela did. Latonlogy, the mobile been on the Gajak Mozoma, Gajak Nomazi, Gavas, and the Saji Telayo. Yeah, Tanda Saji, and also be Saji about the Rosai. The Kanga Tanda, the two mention Saji, and also did it Jasha in La Rochita.
사실 이거 말하는지.
좀 당연히 차서만 가면 당연히 땡기는 봐.
Yes. Sir.
당연히.
So, just for the spacious purpose, I have recited all those outlines up to the special insight, outlines of up to special insight. So we'll stop here with this today.
도대체 내가 저기 영화제 네 다지게 가는 라바나 얘기로 와. 다 뭐네 소소소소라 저와요 소소소소라 나네 또네 추년에 지쟁이 있어나 근데 너무 많아 대양 지게 저런 뭐 전에 신고전에 개체시버지 많이 봐 나저 배저 동배토네 나네 전부를 지라 고주사는 고주 타신사는 되네 타신나 네 고주에 대한 많아지 차그래 아니 저에 대한 많아지 니 그래 네 대응에 개체버래 얘나 지주지다니 제초고마는 맞아 말해 그 내가 다투게 라라게 컨도메가 가래는 예시기로 얘나 소소소를 저거는 은혜게 이보지는 게 있잖아 내가 될은 주다 너가 말했잖아 다 세이저 초기 손지를 한번 지면은 엔트리지 초에는 하나다 드리지 제게 생기게 소소게 내가 하나니까 나다 될은 하지 그거는
Let's do our dedication prayers here. So when you're doing dedication prayers, and here now, it's important part of one to think about is to, that if one really has a genuine, compassion or genuine caring for oneself, and one should always try to extract essence from this human rebirth and be on the path, unmistaken path, unmistaken spiritual path. So I'm not really being, really, partial, but I would safely say that if one is able to be on the spiritual path, the path that is given, the instructions of the path that's given by the Lama Tsongkhapa, is something that is very, very, very unique. So if one is able to go through the teachings of the Lam Rim Chenmo, right from the beginning, if one engages in these teachings, if one engages in the practice unmistakenly, then one will achieve unmistaken result. So therefore, let's dedicate all our, virtues that we have accumulated today, and prayer for all of us to be able to engage in this practice and be able to achieve the unmistaken result in the future.
Nyemo ren ze je sho sa je me je sho je me do zhong. Je ro ni je ni de je bo de. San je je do mi de be wa yi. Luo ge nan da je. Je bo sho je wa ge da yang da na ma da. 这边去这边啦，我学姐，撒当那就有点劳作的，我就讲给我，人都说也当个这，没得那个的。道要一遍，天天人都天天说年年，看到阳光刚些撒巴的，路边马的给当着玩，当真家业红包大就急，天马身边赛道更多样，家边养就在边结束的。 天边人把根桑能接受，年年周边皆能年些手，让根节节多边能接的，修长自月正月到根节，若月一直面包谢谢你，天保有人心就急。 南无人间诸业莫教，朝朝娘婆举杯受典礼，年节清别一绕九波耶，别别别别四王谢佛书，随经教业民众天天的，列诸相处能就天边讲。 他的能者也能别的心，遥远四方人都终究知。老僧诸别天见诸邪经，月见世界莫当人面根，色罗更多教也莫不也。 能当者我能就知。 阿弥陀佛，求那确实知，随心诸那自把地狱塞，诸天能就造作诸邪经，这些将此书，有就一切，就是那边过此受的经，那个听的书就结果。 老僧天边这面扫松节，若月面色道，念就结，刚着若月过月心光色，月望马里就月，心之色望天色叫所以。 小别三天光，点就结，江边八月知道千波涛，松波点阳点见点，得到君子结色道路去，夜晚的闹堂街绕多梦，就从西边讲话当街去。 我刚到九州高坡地，大军月月扫我的根江，双波世界绕多梦。哎呀，对不起。